have the absolute pleasure and honor of being here with Secretary Burgum to talk about his new role in Secretary of the Interior, energy abundance, and all other things. But maybe I want to start with your personal story. The short version is you're from North Dakota. You launched your career as an entrepreneur and investor. You built a company. You sold it to Microsoft. You ran, a huge part of Microsoft for a long time, and then you didn't stop there. You ran a venture firm. You invested in companies like Atlassian when they were really small, and helped them grow to IPO. You served on the boards of multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. I mean, that's a lot. And then one day you decided to run for governor. So tell us about what called you to public life. What made you, make that switch and make that journey?
Well, thanks, Erin, and thanks everybody for being here, and thanks Andreessen Horowitz for sponsoring this amazing conference. So grateful for all of you here. If you're here and you're part of this conversation, you're an important part of America, and I just want to say thank you to that, because I'm sure a lot of you are thinking the same thing that I was thinking. In answer to your question was, having been an entrepreneur, built companies, had success, you're thinking, hey, how do I give back? Well, then I started looking at the philanthropic work, like working with the local rural high school that I had where I had grown up, that when I was there, and there's no computers, and like, how do we move that forward? Well, then I started asking questions about what does the state of North Dakota spend on K-12 as a state? And I found out that our little state was spending $1 billion a year on K-12. And I came home to Catherine one night and I said, hey, maybe we should give our time instead of giving money, because it's going to have a bigger impact, the levers of that. So the whole thing was driven by impact. And it's another story what her reaction was when I said that.
I can imagine. And so what are some of the similarities and differences that you found as an executive and now maybe as governor and now leading the Department of the Interior?
Well, I think that any of you that have ever had any pull towards public service, I would just recommend, get into an operating job. I had no interest really in politics. I will never be a senator or a congressman, but we need people that know how to actually run things and can bring business principles. And being a governor, in a state like North Dakota, where you've got enormous power to actually drive a number of things, the land board, the land, minerals, there's actually, North Dakota is the only state that has a state bank. You get to be chairman of a bank when you're the governor. So there's all these things where you can just bring business principles about how do you treat taxpayers like customers? How do you focus on innovation over regulation? How do you cut red tape to drive capital formation? How do you make sure that talent is flowing towards your state instead of away from your state? And that involves getting involved in building, smart, healthy communities. So it's just a super fun, cool job for anybody that loves doing operating work, and you can really just avoid a lot of the politics. And so then you go from being a governor to leading Interior, which is a fantastic again opportunity, giant turnaround, 65,000 people work in Interior across 14 time zones, and the span of what Interior controls. But the quick summary is it's America's balance sheet. There's almost 500 million acres of surface, 700 million acres of subsurface, and 2.5 billion of offshore, just to start with, not to mention all the national parks, the wildlife refuges, 574 federally recognized tribes that we've got trust and responsibility to work with. All of these things, that's America's balance sheet. If Interior was a standalone company, it would be the largest balance sheet in the world, bar none. Saudi Aramco, no one would come close to it. But the returns are just horrible. The amount of revenue coming off of all of that for the American people is sad. So when I say it's a part of the turnaround, the way we balance the budget, the way we reduce the deficits, the way we drive our American economy, and the way we do things like developing energy resources to sell to our friends and allies so that they don't have to buy from our adversaries. A lot of that starts with Interior. So I'm super excited, and anybody here that's like, hey, someday I got the pull, I want to do government. There's a room full of entrepreneurs like this. Jump into the operating jobs, because you'll make a huge difference.
So let's get into your priorities now as Secretary of the Interior. You've come out really in favor of energy abundance, but maybe can we unpack that a little bit? What do you mean by that, beyond just sort of have more energy? What are some of the specific priorities you have in your new role?
Well, I'd say the new roles plural because part of what in the discussion coming into this administration, there was a lot of discussion, and part of the discussion was, hey, we need Chris Wright to lead the Department of Energy. Someone I've known for 20 years. He's brilliant. He was the right guy. He's got a background in nuclear, geothermal, and all the things that go on in energy, and it's really a partnership then with Interior because he's got a bunch of stuff. We've got all of the land and the minerals. And critical minerals, surface mining, all of the things in Interior. So in the discussion, as we were forming the administration, one of the discussions we had that President Trump agreed to and then created by executive order was the National Energy Dominance Council. And about 2/3 of the cabinet sits on that council. And he's asked me to chair it, Chris Wright to be the vice chair. And our priorities are pretty simple, which is we've got to make sure that we've got abundance of energy to be able to drive the priorities here at home, which is in the top of the list is for AI. We do not have enough electricity for AI. We can go into that in more depth, but that is, that's like a number one. That's why he announced on day one, President Trump, that we have a national energy emergency. It wasn't necessarily about price at the pump. It was we don't have enough electricity and we're going to lose the AI arms race with China. So that's one of our priorities. The other one is that, again, on this selling energy to our friends and allies, the two proxy wars that have been going on under the Biden administration, with Iran funding 24 terror groups and with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, both of those conflicts were being funded by oil sales of those adversaries, and we were failing in our sanctions against those two adversaries. And so part of it on the National Energy Dominance Council includes Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Pam Bondi. I mean, all the people that we need to make sure that we're ensuring our interests abroad as well as here, and then anybody that could block energy development home. So we need to get our prosperity at home, peace abroad. Those are kind of the highest level order bits, and energy is fundamental to both of those missions.
Smack in the middle.
Yes.
So what's your outlook on the various different sources? We've talked a little bit about oil and gas. You've mentioned nuclear, but across kind of nuclear, solar, hydroelectric, oil and gas, how do you think about the kind of breakdown for the United States? And also maybe a separate question, what is the role of technology in some of these industries?
Well, technology plays a key role in all these because every one of these industries is being, challenged and transformed by technology. And I think one thing that's not understood by the American public is that we wouldn't be an energy powerhouse as a country. I mean, now we're the world's largest exporter of oil and gas. None of that happens without the technology associated with the shale revolution. I mean, the amount of technology that went in from us thinking as recently as like 2007 that, hey, we're going to run out of energy. And that was like, oh, we better, do all tax subsidize all these uneconomic sources of intermittent, unreliable energy because we were going to run out. When in fact, then the shale revolution comes along. And I mean, we'll just give one example. A lot of people here in this industry, I meet people all the time that don't understand how tech-rich just the traditional oil and gas shale business is. But in North Dakota, the Bakken, which you've heard of, which has produced 5 billion barrels of oil in North Dakota, a state that wasn't even on the map as an energy producer. It's 30 feet thick, 10,000 feet underground. The Bakken, it's a 30-foot layer of shale. And everybody that works there, they go down 2 miles, they turn a corner, and then they stay in a 30-foot strip for 2 miles. And when my last year as governor, 75% of the permits were 3 miles long. So that's a 50% increase in productive shale for the same one drilling rig. What industry do you folks know that just had a 50% increase in productivity? These are the kind of breakthroughs that are happening. So I'm in a drill shack with a 25-year-old petroleum engineer, watching him do this. There's not a drop of oil. He's got a white lab coat on. There's no oil around. It's not like, Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood. There's not like oil flying everywhere.
Landman is the new hot show.
Or like if you're for the older crowd, Rock Hudson, when there's like black and white movies from the 50s. I mean, that's not happening. There's like literally one of the cleanest industries. And I said, how do you stay in? How do you stay in a 30-foot strip for 2 miles? And he said, sir, if your house was 2 miles down, underground, and 2 miles over, I could drill the lockout on the front door.
Oh my God.
So
Wow.
it's like, and this is several years ago. I mean, the technology's gotten even better. So the technology is affecting all of these: geothermal, nuclear. There's a whole wave. I think over $8 billion of venture capital has gone into the next gen small modular nuclear. I mean, all of that is super exciting. So I mean, our approach is we'll support any energy that's reliable. If it's reliable, it's affordable, and reliable, is part of that is meaning we can provide base load for AI. Reliable right now does not include wind every day, because wind doesn't blow all the time, so we're sort of excluding that. And then if it has to run on tax subsidies, and again, like wind has been getting tax subsidies for 30 years and still isn't standing on its own 2 feet. We're so close on having breakthroughs with nuclear, and now with the abundant natural gas we have. I mean, the bridge to nuclear is natural gas, and I'd say our administration is supportive of everything. There's been but they're really hard look at offshore wind, because offshore wind is like 3 times as expensive as onshore, and if we're killing a lot of whales, which may be happening with the harmonic of that, then fossil fuels may have to step in and save the whales a second time. And I say that because the only time that humanity's ever transitioned off of any energy source was in the 1800s, when we transitioned off of whale oil and kerosene.
And found fossil fuels.
So fossil fuels have saved the whales twice.
I love that. That's a good tagline. You mentioned AI. Obviously, at A16Z, we invest in a lot of AI companies. All forecasts point to AI being a massive consumer for the foreseeable future, both in training the latest models as well as in serving them at inference time. You're seeing the cloud providers, the large AI labs, start to even get involved in the energy supply chain themselves, as they're increasingly bottlenecked on data centers, which run on energy. So maybe talk a little bit first about some of the national security perspective here. Like, what is the importance of building out our energy capacity for AI? And then also, what do you see the federal government's role being here?
Well, it's of absolutely critical importance, and if you're going to ask me, what's the existential threat? I mean, the existential threat is not a degree of temperature change in 2100. The existential threat was Iran getting a nuclear weapon and losing the AI arms race to China. Those are the 2 top order bits in terms of priorities. And on the AI arms race, it's a race for who can generate the most electricity. And we may be ahead. We talk about, we're ahead in AI. We're ahead in AI. Yeah, we're ahead. Are we? 12 months, 6 months, 18 months. We argue about that. But we're losing the electricity race, and we're losing it because it's self-inflicted. I mean, we've decommissioned so much baseload in this country in favor of the unreliable intermittent sources that we've put our whole grid at risk. And now we have this collision, which is occurring and coming out of places like this room. There's $300 billion of CapEx expense just for the top 5 tech companies. And that $300 billion of CapEx expense is going towards AI, but it's also going towards power generation. So the tech industry will spend more on power generation than the power generation industry, because the power generation industry in the U.S. is largely regulated, slow-moving, crawling along, have these broken markets. They can't see the demand signal. And so this is, when I was in Houston at the energy conference last week with 10,000 people around the world, I mean, the biggest thing happening in energy is what's emitting from here. All of you need AI. All of you need these data centers. And it's not, I'm trying to explain to policymakers, it's not a data center like, we're doing a shopping order or we're processing a health claim. In AI, we're manufacturing intelligence. And whoever manufactures the most intelligence is going to win, because it's a general tool that can change every job, every company, every industry. And it's got massive implications for national security. And so I would say, I lived my life, growing up in a town with, as I said, with no computers, and then having my whole life transformed by software, and realizing during my whole life that software was the biggest invention in humankind that transformed human capability. And then now you throw AI in this thing, and it allows everybody to achieve heights that we hadn't seen it. I mean, it's a pathway to where we could have the highest GDP growth our country's ever seen. But what, are we going to get in our way and have regulation such that we can't build a nuclear plant? You can't build a natural gas power plant. We have to do that stuff. And then we had policies the last 4 years that were actually antithetical to that. They were actually trying to shut down U.S. energy at a time when we needed it more. And then the other challenge that we have to deal with as policymakers is that each of you, in your business models, the cost of an AI data center, electricity, it might be 5%. The margins are so great. Oh, it doubles, and now it's 10%. Okay, we can still build it and still go forward. But do that. But in doing that, all of a sudden, there might be a willingness to pay more for a kilowatt of electricity than ever before, again, in history, because it's worth more. A kilowatt is worth more today than it ever has been. And it's worth more than a family that wants to just cook dinner or heat their home. So then this is why the energy abundance, why we've got to have all forms of energy, and we've got to have things, we have to stop creating artificial demand. We have to stop, states and federal government saying you can't use a natural gas or a propane stove or outlawing those, because we should use our abundant natural gas. We shouldn't be using our scarce electricity to heat those, heat a home or cook dinner when we could be doing it with another heat source more efficiently. So anyway, we've got a bunch of policy changes, and the answer in the short term is going to be natural gas. It's going to be behind the meter, off the grid, and we have to figure out ways to do that without raising consumer prices. But this is something that Chris Wright and I are working on every day. And I would say to any of you, if you're building data centers and you need power, we're not writing papers. We're working on projects. If you have a project that's being held up because you don't have a permit at the state or federal level, then call us. We're the SWAT team. The President of the United States expects us to fix your problem so that you can build what you need to build so that we can, as a country, achieve what we need to achieve relative to AI. So, I mean, it's not like, and I would just say to people, oh, the government moves this slow, permitting takes this slow. There's the speed of government, and then there's the speed of business, and then there's the speed of the dynamic tech industry. Those are all faster. And then there's the speed of Trump 47, and that's faster than anybody else is moving right now. I mean, the sense of urgency for us, if Chris and I say, hey, building an 800-mile pipeline, is going to take 10 years, then he's like, why not 2 years? And he's not joking, he's serious. Like, if you could do anything, Defense Production Act, National Energy Emergency, cut through every piece of red tape, involve all the top people in the world. I mean, everything is, for us right now, is like a Manhattan Project. And we've got to be able to deliver that kind of urgency. So I'm encouraging everyone, one of my goals here today is literally reach out to us if you've got a specific project, because we're not doing papers, we're building projects.
You heard it here.
Yes.
Of course, so we've talked a bunch about the energy independence and energy abundance issue, but it also extends into areas of kind of critical minerals, mining, et cetera. So, I mean, ideologically, if you're in your room in the corner, it might be easy to think about things like large-scale strip mines and kind of poo-poo it and look down on your nose at China's environmental record, but that kind of ignores the reality of how things are made, what is in the goods that we use every day, what is in the equipment that our military needs to keep us safe. So can you give us your pitch for the sort of national security case to reinvest in American resource production more broadly?
Well, fabulous question, Erin, and this is also one of the key things we're working on. But I would say when you hear the president talk about drill, baby, drill, but that's just a broad statement about more of everything. It actually also means mine, baby, mine. America's getting back in the mining business. And if we don't, we're going to be out of business, because right now China's controlling 85% of the refining of the rare earth minerals and the critical minerals. They're collecting those minerals from all over the world because they've invested in mines all over the world, and they have a horrific track record. I mean, the world's largest emitter of CO2. They do mining without reclamation. There's child labor abuses in Africa. I mean, it's horrible. If you cared about the environment, and I know many of you do and have initiatives in your company and your constituents and your customers, then do what we did in North Dakota. We set the most aggressive goal of any state in the nation to be carbon neutral by 2030. With no mandates, no new regulations. It was actually less of everything. It was all about innovation. And mining is the same way I described the shale revolution. There's an opportunity for the application of technology to do it cleaner, smarter, safer, healthier here in the United States than any place else. And we are getting back in the mining game. Every day, Chris Wright and I are talking to people. Capital is starting to flow, and the big thing now is we've got to cut the regulation to bring it back. On the top 20 critical minerals we need, we're importing, in some cases, 100% of those from China. And as this tension keeps developing right now, they're announcing that they're going to stop export controls on one thing after another. I mean, they're creating a bunch of shortages. And I would come back again to, 30% of the world's electricity today comes from coal. 60% of China comes from coal. China's added close to 100 gigawatts of coal in the last 12 months. I mean, 1 gigawatt does Denver, and so they've added 100 Denver's worth of coal production. But understand, in the coal that we have in the United States, whether it's not just thermal for baseload, but the metallurgical coal, a bunch of these critical minerals you're asking about is in that coal. But they call them rare earth because it's parts per million. Mm-hmm. You cannot afford to go after the gallium and the germanium in the wonderful, clean, beautiful lignite coal in a place like North Dakota or Wyoming. You can't go after it unless you're actually doing the thermal mining. Then it becomes economic for an entrepreneur to come in and say, look, they're going to do the thermal stuff. I'm going to take out the germanium and the gallium. So we have to get coordinated between these as opposed to killing off everything we do in mining. We've got to figure out the synergies that exist between traditional mining. Same with uranium. I mean, we're importing uranium from Russia for our 93 nuclear plants. And
all the startups who are trying to build new nuclear reactors as well.
Yeah, but even in that uranium slag, there's a bunch of critical minerals. Yeah. I mean, so the technology and the innovation that can occur, people that jump into mining right now with the sense of urgency around this, there's going to be a lot of money to be made in the mining industry. And again, we'll do it, better, smarter, safer. And then and we don't have to go anywhere near our national parks. We don't have to, do any of that. We've got so much land that is unoccupied and really in low population. I mean, 80% of Nevada is federal land. 60% of Utah. I mean, these places we have Alaska. And then hey, toss in Greenland. I mean, there's critical minerals all over the place.
I won't ask you more about that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's an opportunity for us to get back to being a mining powerhouse that our country was at one time. And part of that is we've got a map, baby map. And so again, if any of you've got technology on non-intrusive ground penetrating radar, whatever. I mean, the U.S. Geologic Survey has been underfunded, understaffed, shifted the wrong direction. That's also part of Interior. We got to get back to mapping these hundreds of millions of acres we have because that's the path to the future. And if you don't think that, then buy the book from the early 2000s called The Map That Changed the World, about the geologist that mapped Wales, Scotland, and the UK, and that led to their century of dominance and being a world power because they mapped their underground resources.
So you've alluded to a few areas where you're looking for technology or interested in meeting founders, but maybe more broadly, what's your advice to founders and entrepreneurs? What are the big opportunities for ambitious young folks who want to build in this space?
Well, I would say to anybody that wants to be an entrepreneur sort of broadly would go for it. I mean, go for it and do it because there's nothing more fun and nothing more rewarding than having an opportunity to solve a problem, create amazing jobs, give back to your communities. And that's what the whole ecosystem does. And that's the American dynamism. That's what Andreessen Horowitz has basically said. This is so wonderful that you had a leading Silicon venture capital group that said we are going to focus on things that help drive America forward, because guess what? That's what always has. Innovation, ingenuity has been the thing that has always driven our country forward. And to have an esteemed firm like this step up and say, we recognize that, we're going to get behind it, we're going to brand it, it's really, really powerful. And right now, again, the opportunities across all forms of energy, the opportunities are amazing. And then you throw AI, you apply AI to the mapping issue, you apply AI to biotech, you apply AI to all this stuff. I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, with the lifespans that increase we're going to see, the diseases we're going to solve, and we're short of coders. Oh, now this, I was with Greg Brockman, plug for Greg, one of the co-founders of OpenAI, also from a small town in North Dakota, about same size, 300 people. He was on stage the other day, we were at a conference, and he said, well, now that, ChatGPT can actually, on many of the things, code better than he can. I gasped, and the rest of the audience didn't understand what that meant. But when you've got someone, the elite saying that this can code better. I mean, think of what that can do in terms of the acceleration of software. And when I think about how we deliver deliver government. I mean, 2.5 years ago in North Dakota, the minute we finished the legislative session, I brought all the cabinet leaders together. We had tech leaders that were the leading in AI from where we were at the time. It seems like 2.5 years ago. It seems like a lifetime ago in terms of where it's gone. But I said, wow, did everybody get the budgets they wanted? No. Did everybody get the head count they wanted? No. Well, how about a free assistant for every one of your team members in your agency that speaks 27 languages, can do research reports, all that. And now, of course, that capability is even advanced. So one of the things, we can have a leaner, more efficient, more responsive government. I mean, part of the way we get the permitting process from years or decades in some cases in mining, how do we get that down to months or weeks? AI is going to be part of the solution. So if you're working on a startup that accelerates permitting reform, I'm interested in visiting with you as well.
Love it, love it. So we have just about a minute left, which is just enough time to ask this bonus question by popular request. There are a lot of advocates for freedom cities in the room and at the firm. So can we hope to see any movement here during the administration?
Well, this came up in a discussion just on Thursday on the Oval Office when we were talking about it. When the opportunity zones were created, President Trump supported those. But the opportunity zones are really designed around an idea that will take impoverished or designated lower income areas that would have an opportunity of capital flowed there and stayed there, that there would be benefits relative to long-term capital gains. I mean, it was a tax incentive. I think that when this version, particularly if we do, these freedom cities or Trump freedom zones, as I've heard is another potential branding, is that if you do that, that it would be, it would happen do it on federal land, and then have the incentive not necessarily be taxes, but have it be dereg. That if you could come in and it's like you come here and you're going to get every permit you need to do something in the next 30 days, I mean, I think it would be a waterfall of capital flowing to those areas, because the market signal around regulation is the highest cost that anybody that's trying to build something. We got to get back to build, baby, build in this country, as opposed to bury you in red tape, which is the current situation.
New tagline: build, baby, build.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary. This has been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Well, thank you, Erin.